We have some more NHL signings to talk about here today. We have several more restricted free agents that have come to terms with their NHL teams, and we also have another member of the first round of the 2020 draft signing his entry-level deal. We'll get into all the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have several more contracts that came about today, mostly restricted free agents that have come to terms with their teams and an entry-level deal here as well. So let's get things started. First up with the Ottawa Senators with another RFA signing today. That's, I think, 3 days here in a row. They've signed forward Philip Schlappick to a one-year contract. He's been in their system now for a few years, kind of been going up and down between the NHL and AHL, still trying to find a regular NHL spot if he can. He gets a two-way contract for 1 year, giving him a salary of $700,000 at the NHL level and $70,000 at the American Hockey League level as well. Given the amount of prospect depth at the forward position that they've really been able to garner here in the last couple of years with all the draft picks and players they've acquired, it's certainly making it tougher on him to find himself a regular spot, but he very well could see himself being a bottom six center or winger longer term if he can continue developing. But the native of the Czech Republic is certainly a pretty decent hockey player. Just needs to kind of gain a little bit more consistency when he has NHL opportunities. Hasn't really been able to translate that offensive game on a consistent basis here just yet. Now, one of the bigger signings of the day was the Colorado Avalanche coming to terms and avoiding arbitration with newly acquired defenseman Devon Toews, who they came over from the Islanders. They get a 4-year contract in place with an average annual value of $4.1 million. It's a pretty significant deal. But of course, Toews, who, like I said, was acquired because the Islanders basically couldn't afford to keep him. They only had a limited amount of space. They had him as well as Pulock and Barzal that they need to sign. So he kind of became a bit of a salary cap victim with the Isles. Goes over to the Avalanche in a pretty good return. It really adds another dimension to their already pretty strong and relatively young blue line there. So it's a really solid contract. I think he'll certainly earn his money with the Avalanche and be a solid member here of their top four blue liners for the next 4 years. Now, another pretty significant signing today was the Red Wings coming to terms through arbitration, though, with Tyler Bertuzzi on a 1-year contract. They started the arbitration process on Sunday, and they obviously, once that process starts now, you cannot continue negotiating, sir. The arbitrator heard the full case on both sides. It was believed that the player was asking for about $4.5 million, and the team was offering about $3.1 million, and the arbitrator awarded him at $3.5 million. So not quite halfway, a little bit closer to the team side of it by a little bit, but still relatively in the middle there. So for Bertuzzi, a 1-year deal, he'll still be a restricted free agent at the end of this contract. He still has 1 more year of service that he needs to put in before he can become a UFA. So if they end up in the same boat next year and can't agree to an extension ahead of time and end up going to arbitration again, then he very well could be walked directly to a UFA status. So we'll see. He's become a pretty important player for the Detroit Red Wings amongst their younger forwards. So I'm sure Yzerman would like to get him locked up longer term. They still have to deal with Anthony Mantha. That one's still coming up here for the Wings here in the near future. So we'll see how they make out on that one. But first case we've had so far to go to arbitration. Another thing with that as well is in case you might have heard me say this before, but there's a small percentage of deals where a player files for arbitration or the team can file for arbitration as well. Most often it's the player that does. Once they go through that process, though, and you go through a hearing, obviously it's kind of like a court case in a way. Like both sides are arguing their side of the story. The team's arguing to why they should pay less. The players arguing to why they should pay more. It often does damage to the relationship. And a high percentage of players who go through that do not stick with their teams longer term. I know I did a study on that about a year or two ago and looked at a lot of the past arbitration cases over the last 5 to 10 years. And there was quite a few of them that within 1 or 2 years were gone. So we'll see if this has any impact on Bertuzzi's long-term future with Detroit. Now, we had some other signings here as well. The Winnipeg Jets have signed forward Jansen Harkins to a 2-year extension at $725,000 per year. Of course, he got into, I think it was 20-some games with the Jets last year. Saw him a bit in the playoffs as well. Looked pretty decent. Can certainly be, I think, a relatively cheap, inexpensive, but yet valuable member of their bottom six in Winnipeg. So another pretty decent signing there as well. And the New York Islanders avoided arbitration with Josh Ho-Sang, which I was quite surprised to see Ho-Sang file for arbitration, considering what's gone on with him and the Islanders. I mean, he ended up sitting out a lot of last season because they put him down to the minors, and at one point he had just gone home, so I don't really think he had really any leverage. So it was quite surprising to see that it ended up going to that, but they have avoided that process and have come to terms on a contract. He gets a 1-year, 2-way contract, paying him $700,000 at the NHL level, but a really substantial $225,000 at the American Hockey League level. Now, as we stated before, a lot of AHL contracts range between $70,000 to $100,000. So for the odd player who's expected to be, exceptional at that hockey level, they do get more money. Sometimes you do see the odd $200,000 or $300,000 contract. So for them to offer him that kind of money gives him a little bit more incentive to play in the minors should they decide they want to put him there. But we'll see if he'll finally get a more legit shot to stick at the NHL level. He's a player that came out of junior with a ton of talent, ton of drama, ton of baggage, and they just have really, it's continuing to follow him around here. His reputation isn't the best, so we will see how things go if he can finally get his career on track here on this 1-year contract. The Columbus Blue Jackets have come to terms with RFA Calvin Thurkoff. Now, he's mostly been a minor leaguer so far, but he did see limited action with Columbus last year, appearing in 3 NHL games. So he gets a 1-year, 2-way contract, again, the standard $700K at the NHL level, $70K at the American Hockey League level. So another RFA that I obviously felt that they should keep around in their system. He did have some pretty decent stats at the AHL level. So again, with a team like Columbus, with the moves they've made, I think they'll probably have a hard time cracking the lineup, but certainly show that he can at least be a call-up option for them and see if he can make the most of it when he gets his opportunity. Now, the other member of the 2020 NHL draft class to sign their entry-level contract today was somebody who was taken late in the first round. Washington Capitals took Hendrix Lapierre, who was certainly one of the more polarizing picks in the first round. A lot of different opinions on where he was going to go. Really solid player. Many argue top 10, top 15 talent, but obviously due to the fact that he missed a lot of time with injuries and suffered a concussion, there was obviously some hesitancy, I guess we could say, on a lot of teams' parts to use a high pick on him, but he could certainly turn out to be one of the draft steals, really, in my opinion. Like, he's a very talented hockey player. Probably shouldn't take too long, I wouldn't think, to get an opportunity with the Caps. I mean, with the flat salary cap era now, you're going to see a lot of players like that when they're drafted as soon as they're ready to get chances, because it's a cheap contract for one. So from a financial standpoint, teams are going to need and have a necessity to have at least a few ELCs on their books to kind of offset what they would pay a veteran forward. So you're going to see a lot of veteran guys that are kind of at the lower end of the road here, in the cheaper part of the scale, at the $1 to $2 million range, $3 million range, that are probably going to get squeezed out because your high-end talent's not going to go anywheres, and then you're kind of your middle of the road for the most part will be mostly safe, but then you're going to see a lot of those ELC contracts, I think, replace a lot of those vets who normally would stick around. So we're going to see some guys' careers probably cut short due to the flat cap, and we're probably going to see some of these young guys kind of get pushed a little sooner than they may be ready for. Hopefully they're ready. I guess, in the case of Lapierre, he definitely won't be playing this year. It'll be at least one more year, I would imagine. But either way, he certainly gets a combination of some Schedule A and B bonuses in there as well, being a first-round pick, so he has an opportunity to earn some extra money. But his cap hit will be the standard $925,000, barring unless he achieves those bonuses and earns extra money. So in years 2 and 3, we could see higher cap hits as he progresses through his entry-level deal. So we'll see how that goes. So there's still lots of UFAs out there with plenty of speculation of where they're going to end up. Lots of players that still need deals. A fair bit of contracts that are going to still be settled through the RFA process, through arbitration, or teams and players coming to terms ahead of time as well. So there's still a fair bit to talk about here in free agency. Even though things have slowed down, it's still going to keep trickling in here over the coming days. So if you let me know your thoughts on all these contracts down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.